Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
The voice echoed again, deep and resonant, like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was oddly mechanical, lacking the warmth of anything truly human. Timothy Williamson, it repeated. I opened my eyes, but there was nothing to see, just an endless void. It wasn't darkness or light or any color that had a name. It was simply nothing. There was no sense of direction, no up or down, no left or right. I couldn't tell if I was standing or floating. It was as if the concept of orientation had ceased to exist. I felt nothing, no warmth, no cold, no pain, no pleasure. There was no hunger gnawing at my belly, no thirst parching my throat, no aches in my body. In a strange way, I was grateful for that absence, but it left me disoriented and unnerved. The lack of sensation was complete, all-encompassing. It was as if I had become part of the nothingness around me. I knew I was dead. I had known I was dying before it happened. I had had a moment's awareness and opened my eyes to see my son and daughter being comforted by their respective spouses. I could not see my wife, but she may have been on the other side of the bed, and I was too weak to turn my head, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I looked at my grown-up children, standing at my bedside looking so concerned, and my heart filled with love and pride. They had turned out all right, despite my parenting. They were bright and energetic and kind and generous and pleasant and gregarious, and seemed to have neither inherited nor acquired any of my character flaws. For that I was exceedingly grateful. I wanted to tell them not to worry, that I was fine and my torment would soon be over and they should file me under memories, Dad, and get on with their lives. But my mouth was refusing to respond to my brain. It was probably all these damn drugs the damn doctors kept pumping into me. I should be grateful. The drugs had at least kept the worst of the pain at bay, and the doctors had done their best. I felt a pinpoint of blackness start somewhere deep inside like a black hole. It expanded rapidly, and I knew my time was close. I don't know how I did, but I did. The thought that I would soon be dead filled me with a mixture of relief and regret. Relief that the long months of pain and suffering would soon be over and my family could at last get on with the lives they had put on hold when my illness had been diagnosed as fatal, and regret for all the things I could have done with my life but didn't. For all the experiences I could have had but hadn't, and for all the good I could have done but didn't. I tried to stretch out my hand and feel the comfort of their touch one last time. Memorable dying speeches were beyond me, but I tried to croak out one final goodbye. I have no idea if I succeeded, for the ultimate darkness swept up from behind me and engulfed me in its deep, silent, eternal, black cloak. Timothy Williamson, the voice said again. Yes? I managed to reply, or did I just think it? Having no mouth or tongue or palate or throat or lungs, I suppose I must have thought it. Good. You are with us. Where am I? Wherever I was, it didn't seem to be like any sort of heaven or hell I had ever heard of or read about. On the other hand, perhaps this was, indeed, hell, for what could be worse than spending eternity in the ultimate of sensory deprivation? You are in limbo. Limbo. I thought that was just an invention of the Catholics. You are not a Catholic. It was more a statement than a question. No. Limbo is real, as far as anything is. Anyway, the Catholic Church did away with the concept of limbo some time ago. Oh, I didn't know that. This was surreal in the extreme. I was newly dead and discussing comparative theology with a disembodied voice. Are you God? The voice almost chuckled. No, but you can think of me as he. Are you a Christian? No. Muslim? Jew? Buddhist? Wiccan? Taoist? Believe in Zeus, Odin, Karl Marx, Heidegger, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy? No. I never did go much on organized religion. Sorry. Don't be. Makes it easier if I don't have to fight my way through a morass of misconceptions. Do you believe in God at all? If you mean an old man with a white beard and long hair staring benevolently, or otherwise, down from the sky, no. Even better. Is this the afterlife then? Good heavens, no. The voice laughed, an eerie and distinctly unpleasant sound. Good heavens, dearie me. Sometimes I amaze myself. It seemed more than taken with the cleverness of its wit. And? I said in an attempt to halt the disagreeable noise. What? If this is not the afterlife, what is it? I thought I had already explained. This is limbo. You did. Sorry. A better question would be, why am I here and what happens now? That's two questions. So? Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Spanish Inquisition? It sounded genuinely puzzled. What do that group, if imbecilic, homicidal maniacs, have to do with it? I wanted to shrug, which is not easy when you have no body. Never mind. It's not important. Could you please answer my questions? Clearly the voice had never watched Monty Python. Harumph. Yes. Well, you have been chosen by sophisticated random sampling techniques to be offered a unique and outstanding opportunity. It is an opportunity offered to only a select few. A golden opportunity to turn over a new leaf, start on a fresh page, wipe the slate clean. I cannot stress how fortunate you are to be given this wonderful chance. He was beginning to sound like an advert for a timeshare in Florida. I couldn't resist it. You mean you pulled my name out of a hat? If a disembodied voice could be said to sound sheepish, this one did. Well, yes. What's more, your opportunity can't be unique if you offer it to others. It's unique to you. It sounded distinctly huffy. So, are you interested? You haven't told me what it is yet. The opportunity to go back and live your life again. You what? What sort of an offer is that? It's a magnificent offer. A golden opportunity to relive your... Yes. Enough of the hard sell. What's the point? I mean, why would I want to relive my life again? You might do things differently next time around, it said eagerly. That's part of the experiment. To see if all factors in a human's life are programmed, or if there are random factors involved. I don't follow you. Take an example. It was sounding enthusiastic now. Say, in your past life, you were walking down a street and you saw a sign saying, vacancies. Apply within. You went in and you were offered your dream job, which led to you becoming rich and successful. Now, in your next life, would you see the sign? Would you go in? Would you accept the job? You see what I'm driving at? To be frank, no. If my life and circumstances the second time around were exactly the same as they were the first time, I would behave in exactly the same way. It couldn't be any other way. Yes, but what would happen if, say, a seagull shit in your eye just as you were passing the notice? You wouldn't see it, and you wouldn't go in. Your life would take a completely different track, other than the fact that the seagull wasn't there in my first life, so it couldn't be in my second. It wouldn't be my life, it would be someone else's. No, it wouldn't. I mean, yes, it would. Now you're getting me confused. You would still be Timothy Williamson, but I wouldn't be me. I would be another B. Timothy Williamson. If you were to pick that name from your celestial hat again, it would be a different person that was talking to you now, not me. I was beginning to enjoy this. I always did enjoy a good intellectual debate. But it wouldn't matter. You would still be Timothy Williamson. So, a rose by any other name? What? Shakespeare. I sighed. You've not read any Shakespeare either, I gather. No. What is a Shakespeare? Never mind. It may not matter to you that the Timothy Williamson you meet the second time around is not me, but it matters to me. Yes, but... No buts. Your proposition to send me back to relive my life exactly as it was before holds no attraction for me. But it might be better? Or it could be a damn sight worse. It sighed. If anything, that was worse than the laughter. Wait a moment. There's something bothering me, I said, and paused to let whatever it was trickle to the surface. Got it. This is some sort of joke, isn't it? Some sort of celestial, candid camera, or punked. You're not really God. You're the heavenly equivalent of Benny Hill. My God. You're not actually Benny Hill, are you? I can assure you I am not Benny Hill, whoever he is. That's a relief. But I still think this is some kind of absurd practical joke. What you're proposing is nonsense. This whole conversation is a load of nonsense. When I'm born again, I won't remember anything of my first life, and I won't remember this conversation. I will be exactly as I was the first time around. It will be as if my first life never happened. That being so, my second life will travel exactly the path as my first. Maybe even it has, and this is the second or third or umpteenth time we've had this conversation. I hope not. So, there's no reason at all for you to be talking to me in the first place. In fact, I cried triumphantly, if you find my life so fascinating, why don't you just replay the Timothy Williamson story on your video machine, or whatever equivalent you have? That would serve the same purpose and be a lot cheaper. It sighed dolorously. If I'd had any hair on the back of my neck, if I'd had a neck to have hair on, they would be standing at quivering attention just now. Don't do that, I said crossly. Do what? Make that god-awful noise. Sorry. It sighed again, and I bit my non-existent tongue to prevent myself from screaming. I was hoping you wouldn't notice. Notice what? The flaw in the offer. If it's flawed, why make it in the first place? I have to. Why? It's in the rules. What rules? The rules of the experiment. They say that I must try to convince you to return without revealing anything. Listen, Buster. If you want to have any chance at all of convincing me to accept your ludicrous offer, you'd better chuck your rules in the bucket and tell me exactly what is in this deal. Right now, I feel like telling you to take your offer and insert it into your celestial backside. That isn't very friendly. I'm not feeling very friendly. I'm dead, remember? It sighed again. Stop it. I screeched. Sorry. Very well. Let it be noted that the human Timothy Williamson has refused to participate unless all conditions are revealed. Satisfied? I might be when you start talking. The proposal is as I have indicated. You will be returned to your previous existence with the chance to live your life again. See, it sounded smug. I told you it was a unique offer. Nobody else can live your life for you. And it almost sighed but didn't. And you will be allowed to choose your entry point, so to speak, and you will retain your memories of your previous existence. There, that's the lot. A number of absolutely vital questions flashed through my mind. I only hoped I could remember them all. Why didn't you tell me this in the first place? Because, according to the rules of the experiment, I am required to try to convince you to return without that knowledge. Do many people accept? My curiosity was piqued. Most of them, yes. What? You mean that the majority of people to whom you make your offer simply accept it and go back without knowing what's going to happen? Millions of people do the lottery. The lure of something for nothing is very strong in you humans. Point taken. But there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. So what is this experiment? If I tell you that I will have to erase the knowledge before you return, why? I wouldn't have thought I needed to explain that. I thought about it. This was an experiment on human behavior. If I knew I was being experimented on, my reactions would not be the same as if I didn't. In fact, now I thought about it, its attempt to convince me to return without telling me the conditions at all was more understandable. Okay, I understand. Who's doing this experiment and why? That I am not at liberty to divulge. Suffice it to say that it is a galactic-wide study into the learning behaviors of primitive species. You mean that the human race is no more than a bunch of laboratory animals? Oh no. It sounded genuinely shocked. That would never be permitted. We have a very high standard of ethics. The human race is the human race, for what that's worth. We are allowed to intervene only where the outcome would not harm either the individual or the species. That's a relief. Is this it? I mean, is this all you do? Capture dying souls and let them relive their lives? No, indeed. This is only a very small part of an experiment so large and so vast your mind could not encompass it. Even my mind has trouble understanding the size of it. Give me an idea. The experiment has been running for several tens of thousands of your years. It involves 472 galaxies, 140,350 species, and over 5 million staff. Bloody hell. That's big. I told you. And the ultimate purpose is? I have already told you. No, you haven't. You've told me what you are doing, but not why. There are not many who question me this far. Well, the elder races, of which I am a member, wish to know how species develop. At some time we assume we must have been planet dwellers like you. How and why we made the transition from that to the way we are now is lost in the mists of time. There must be planet-dwelling species today that have the potential to make the same transition, and our goal is to find out who these species are and what the transitional criteria are. How does giving me the chance to live again help that? I don't know. You don't know? No. I am only an exceedingly minor cog in a very large organization. It is my job to offer randomly chosen humans the chance to relive their lives. I like to think I do it rather well. I know why I do what I do, but I don't know how it fits into the big picture. I'll buy that. I have answered your questions and time is moving on. Will you accept the offer? Hold on. First off, if this is limbo, then time can have no meaning, and secondly, I have more questions. Time may have no meaning for you, but it is precious to me. However, ask your questions provided they are relevant to the offer. Pity. There was a whole lot more I would have liked to have known about this experiment and the people, creatures, things, running it. You said I could choose my entry point. What exactly did you mean by that? That you can choose the exact moment in time to start from again. While that means that, in theory, you could choose any time between birth and late adulthood, experience has shown that ages under 11 of your years and over 18 are less fruitful. So the teenage years are best? Yes. That is the transitional period between dependency and self-sufficiency where most of the events that shape the later character happen. At least, those over which you might expect to have some degree of control. And I would remember everything about my former life? Yes. What about things I had forgotten? Humans actually forget nothing. The precise mechanism is not understood, but it is believed that memories are mislaid or overlaid rather than actually forgotten. Would my recall be perfect? I doubt it. As I said, human memory is not fully understood. However, it is very likely that you would remember much more than you do now. Previous returnees have found that the experiencing of events the second time around triggers memories that they had long believed forgotten. That makes sense. I was beginning to get excited now. Assuming that the voice's promise was true, I had a chance to go back and do it all again. This time, however, I would know when all the critical events and situations were going to occur, and I would know what would happen if I made a certain decision or acted in a particular way. I could change this by acting in a different way. I remembered going out with a very beautiful girl several years younger than I. I had been in awe of her and felt very awkward. So much so that I told her I wasn't worthy of her and she should go and find somebody better than I. I had met her and her older, equally attractive, sister on a station a few months later. They were getting off a train as I was waiting for mine to arrive. We chatted and they invited me back to their house, commenting quite deliberately that their parents were away. Being who I was, I didn't recognize the invitation for what it was and declined. I had, to this day, regretted not taking up the invitation. Now I could and, having 69 years of experience behind me, I would be much better placed to make use of any openings that arose than my naive 20-year-old previous self would have. And again, there was the time I went to live in the West Country for a while. I never really settled in there, and when the project fell through, I hightailed it back to the security of the environment with which I was familiar. It was fairly clear from about halfway through that the project was doomed, but I had stuck with it until the bitter end, rejecting offers to move on. This time it would be different. This time I would accept one of these offers, and who knows what might happen. Forget the West Country. I could become rich. Then I wouldn't need to worry about the opportunities I'd missed or not made the most of. Although I had not been interested in stocks and shares, I knew about the major crises and changes in the world. The Cold War, the space race, the petrol crisis, the Six-Day War, etc., etc. Surely I would have enough residual knowledge to bet knowingly on the stock market. Yes, I would become rich and that would, surely, count for a lot. Money might not make you happy, but the lack of it certainly makes you unhappy. The voice let me think in peace. Okay, I said at last. What happens if I accept the offer? You tell me, as accurately as possible, the date you wish to be returned to, and that's it. You will wake up in the morning a younger and, hopefully, better person. And what happens if I turn you down? Nothing. What do you mean by nothing? Exactly that. You're dead, chum. Finished. Kaput. Snuffed it. And all these other silly expressions you have. At least it didn't mention pining for the fjords, but, of course, it hadn't seen Monty Python. You mean there's no afterlife? No heaven? No hell? No. Nor is there a nirvana, Valhalla, Arcadia, or any other fictional place. But what about my eternal soul? Don't make me laugh. What eternal soul? You know, the thing that astonishes me most about you humans is your conceit. You inhabit an insignificant planet at the arse end of nowhere and you believe that, somehow, you're special, that there is some deity who takes personal interest in your puny squabbles. Even if there were such things as a god or gods, what reason would a person have to be interested in you? You are a human being, the descendant of an ape which, in turn was descended from something else and so on and so forth ad nauseum. Sometime back in the distant past you started as a mindless lump of protoplasm in the primeval sea. Mindless lumps of primeval protoplasm don't have souls, eternal or otherwise. And they certainly don't grow them like arms and legs. Oh, I see. For some reason I found this idea rather comforting. One of the things that had always bothered me about the various religions was their ideas of the afterlife. The Christian concept of angels sitting on clouds playing harps had always seemed a rather daft way of spending eternity. Even Valhalla, where the heroes sat around drinking and feasting and telling tall stories about their heroic exploits, seemed better. Reincarnation had never appealed. The problem was, when you pushed an ardent believer of any religion to describe what their afterlife was like, they always became vague and woolly, like a used car salesman when you asked him for the vehicle service record. Hardly surprising really, as nobody had ever gone there and come back to tell his mates. Well, if you were sent to heaven, would you come back? So, if I turn your offer down, that's it. Timothy Williamson is no more? You've got it. So, are you interested? Interested? Of course I was interested. Who wouldn't be? The chance to go back, armed with all the knowledge and experience of 69 years, and rectify all the mistakes I had made, experience all the things I had missed, take up all the opportunities one had ignored or hadn't seen at the time. Let me at it. I thought back, trying to pick that turning point in my early life. That pivot where I went this way when I could have gone that. I remembered my early childhood in the solitary house at the edge of the small village where my only companion was my little sister. We had not been permitted to mix with the local children who were common. Would going back change that? I remembered my mother who was, even then, suffering the first symptoms of the genetic disorder that would eventually kill her. I remembered my father, a distant and distracted man who traveled for his work and always seemed to be engaged in some domestic activity or another when not working. Would going back change that? I remembered the lonely bus journeys to and from school in the local town, 10 miles either way. I remembered the alienation I felt from the other children at school as they all lived in the town and were friends. Would going back change that? I remembered the upheaval at the age of 10 when my father moved us to a big city so that my mother could be nearer her family as her health deteriorated. I remembered the difficulties I had relating to other children. I remembered my father, or rather I don't remember my father as he rushed from work to hospital, returning home only to eat and sleep, as my mother's health went from bad to worse. Would going back change that? I remembered my mother's death. I was 13 and just entering puberty. I remembered my father almost beside himself with grief. I remembered him going out to the cinema and dances, dressed in his best suit and smelling of cologne for reasons that were never explained. I remembered his announcement that he was going to marry again. My sister and I had hardly even been introduced to the woman who was to become our new mother, let alone consulted. Would going back change that? I remembered the anguish and upheaval as my stepmother, who had not been married before, tried to impose her Lutheran upbringing on our previously easygoing lifestyle. Would going back change that? I remembered the shock of the announcement that we were to move to the other end of the country, to London. I remembered the trials and tribulations of trying to adapt to living in a tiny post-war semi in a London suburb, having been used to the space and freedom of Victorian houses. I remembered the pain and humiliation of attending the all-boys school where I was immediately picked on for being small, uncertain, and having a barbarous accent. I remembered that the trauma of my early teenage years had resulted in arrested puberty, as a result of which I only started maturing at 18 and didn't lose my virginity until I was 23. I remembered that the events that had formed my character, shaped my destiny, made me the person I was today had all been totally and utterly out with my control. I could not prevent my parents from living in the middle of nowhere. I could not change their attitudes, nor prevent my mother's illness. I could not prevent either of them reacting as they did to the events that affected them. I could not change my genes which, along with my formative experiences, had turned me into a socially inept outsider, an observer of life rather than a participant in it. By the time I would be able to influence outcomes, say in my early or mid-teens, the fundamental nature of my character would be in place exactly as it was now. Thanks, I said. I appreciate the offer, but I'll pass. With that there was darkness, and a few moments later there was light. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.